Are you a podcaster? Maybe you've got that big idea and you're looking for a network to join. The multi-award-winning Ozcast Network can get your content to eyes and ears all over the world. Join now for the first month free, and you could be featuring this sound at the beginning of your podcast.
Ozcast.
Simply head to ozcastnetwork.com for details.
Welcome to Apple Slice Podcast, the flagship podcast of the Ozcast Network. What do you reckon about a new intro? It's pretty unique, isn't it?
Yeah, very unique.
I totally didn't steal that from another podcast. But anyway, not sure that's a keeper. But it is today World Emoji Day. Was that? I'm trying to get the timing. Either way, Apple gave themselves a bit of a makeover for all their executive photos with their memojis. And I can't unpicture Johnny Ive as a little baby now. He just looks so cute in emoji form. What do you reckon of these?
Yeah, it was quite funny. Completely unexpected. And at first I seriously thought that the person who posted it was just like doing it on their own, just made an emoji for all of them and pasted them over. And I was like, oh, that's quite clever. And then I saw, it was actually real. Yeah, it's so weird because most of the executive page it's mainly for like investor side versus like Apple enthusiasts. So it's just weird to see them play like, being a bit more foolish, not like, fooling around kind of thing on that sort of page. But it was cool, unique.
I was a bit disappointed with the Craig Federighi one, though. It didn't quite, like, the hair was there, but I think the face needed a bit of tweaking. And I thought Phil Schiller was hilarious because it looked like younger Phil Schiller. Like
yeah, that's definitely not a Phil Schiller I've seen.
Yeah.
Definitely younger Phil Schiller.
I'm sure this page change will only hang around for the day or maybe another day, but head to the Apple website and check it out for yourself before it disappears. So we're going to kick it off with product perception. And before we get into the big hardware announcement that just happened recently, we are both on the betas. You're on the developer beta. And you got your hands on the Shortcuts app, which I think I was a bit surprised in how early it arrived for developers, but it does make sense. From what I can gather, it won't hit the public beta until way later or even just before the GM. So first of all, how did you actually get hold of it? And then how's your experience been with it?
Yeah, so basically, as soon as I saw that it was out in beta through test flight, I just went onto my Apple developer page and requested the beta there. And it was pretty simple, but for some reason I expected it to be instantaneous. So I immediately popped over to my email, pulled down to refresh, and it didn't come through. And then it didn't come through 5 minutes later. And I was like, oh, that's so weird. And then I started noticing on Twitter that people weren't actually getting their invitations yet. So anyway, it came through the next day in the morning, and I downloaded it immediately on all my devices and got started.
Yeah, for some reason I didn't think that you'd have to apply for it. Like I thought it was just anyone running the developer beta, they would get the invite, and the invites were just being progressively rolled out. So yeah, I mean, I'm glad that it was not too long a wait for you to get hold of it. But yeah, digging into the actual app itself, what have you tried so far?
One thing I'll just mention in terms of its distribution, while I was surprised that they gave it out so early, I'm mainly surprised that it's actually not bundled with iOS. It's so core now, and especially if they want Siri to really be taken seriously, I was really surprised that it's not bundled. You've got weird things like my old favorite, photo booth, but not Siri shortcuts. So hopefully they reconsider and end up bundling it. But anyway, as I open it up, unfortunately, fortunately for many, it imports all of your workflows. So that's quite convenient, especially if you're already, very invested in workflow. Just a reminder that Siri Shortcuts is just a rebranded workflow and integrated tightly with Siri, which Workflow is a company they bought 2 years ago. Anyway, so I had on my one device, I had all of my workflow workflows sync, and then the other one, they didn't sync over iCloud, and then the other device was completely clean. So I used that opportunity to get rid of all of my workflow things that I don't use and get started. So I have like a good morning one, which unfortunately I didn't know how to integrate with HomeKit yet, because it's surfaced in a roundabout way. So anyway, I've got some stuff for the morning, and then I'm really excited mainly about sharing shortcuts, because basically what I do a lot is copy links to a whole range of media. It could be a normal web page, it could be a song that I'm sharing, just a whole range, and I end up copying them and then pasting them into messages, because whenever I type the person's name, if I share directly, it always comes up with some random group that they're involved in, or it gives like the wrong phone number, because obviously I moved countries and it's just annoying. So I always do it my own way, and now I've got a whole bunch of sharing options which share exactly how I want them to in one go, including like a leaving from work type thing with my ETA, similar to what that lady demoed at the Apple keynote. It's just that at the moment, sharing requires like final authentication, which is not going to be the case, or at least as per their demo. Messages can send in the background, which at the moment doesn't happen. So it's kind of like limited in many ways. And then I've also got some like functionality things that help me, like opening in Safari when it's not natively there, making a PDF, which I know is something that you had mentioned before. And then like there was another thing, unzipping. So you can unzip files, which I think is really cool. But mainly, like most of the ones that I've actually looked at are just workflows you'd run from the widget or the share sheet, not necessarily Siri workflows or extensions. So anyway, I have like a bedtime one that I wanted to integrate with Siri, which is to turn off all my lights and then play like some white noise, which is something I do every night, but in 2 steps, obviously. And so I am really excited to make that into 1 step. But at the moment, there's some limitation, because obviously HomePod isn't updated yet. And just remind, it's in beta, right? HomePod isn't updated, it's in beta. And so even if I run the shortcut through my HomePod, it tells me I need to enable personal requests on my phone, but then runs the shortcut anyway and plays the music on my phone, which is not ideal. So essentially what I'd want there is for the HomePod to play the music instead of my phone. But getting there, and I'm really excited about it, and I'm fully invested. As I mentioned on Twitter, I moved the phone app, which has been in my dock for I've owned an iPhone for 6 years and it's always been there. I've had the same dock forever and ever, and it's just something I'd never considered changing. But I already use Siri a lot to dial, so I thought, well, the thing about shortcuts is you have to be into them, right? Especially now at the moment, because obviously developers can't update their apps for iOS 12 yet, so they're shortcuts aren't surfacing, and so I really have to go out of my way at the moment to integrate them into my life. So I'm trying to do that now, getting ready for iOS 12, getting ready for full functionality, and I've put the shortcuts app on my dock, which has helped usage.
So in saying all that, are you not expecting the actual HomePod and HomeKit integration until the actual final release, or do you think it'll progressively appear across the stages?
I think it will be only once like HomePod OS 12 is out, because at the moment it's 11.4.1. The focus is on the 12 release for everything, and I just don't see anything improving in the HomePod at the moment until that.
The main thing I'm excited about is, so I had set up a few different workflows which I use at least weekly, but that requires me to either, say, be within Safari and then go and trigger the workflow from the share sheet and stuff like that. And I want to just be able to use the Siri command to do the workflow, to open, to go to those specific web pages and do the conversion and save to the camera roll and that sort of thing. So I'm super excited about that, but obviously not being on the developer beta, it's going to be a bit of a wait. That being said, early September really isn't that long away, so it's not like it's going to be a huge drag just waiting for it.
Yeah.
But it's good that at least one of us has had the hands-on experience so far.
Yeah.
And I'll definitely, as soon as you notice anything with like the next developer beta release, in terms of any additional functionality or integrations, definitely let us know, because I'll be keen to discuss it.
Yeah, it's pretty much just completely rebranded workflow at the moment, not much extra, and just the ability to add it to Siri. So we know from the demo that more is coming, more direct HomeKit, automatic sending, spoken replies from Siri that you can set up. Because I can do that at the moment, but it still doesn't integrate through Siri, and there's just not 100% integration there. One thing that I am worried about, because I'm actually not sure if it is going to be solved and how they plan to deal with this. So I have a good night scene as part of HomeKit, which is kind of like a standardized one that they have. And then I actually wanted to use the custom phrase good night to set that scene and then play the playlist. But unfortunately, I was hoping that it would first search for the phrases I've given as shortcuts, and then if fail, then go to whatever like Siri would normally do. But it doesn't seem to work that way. It works opposite. So I actually had a lot of trouble finding a Siri shortcut phrase that was not already something to do with bedtime. Because if I said like, I tried bedtime music, but then I'll play my bedtime playlist, which is only half of what I want to do. And yeah, so I really hope that, either I figure it out better or Apple figures it out better, but there's room to improve in conflicting commands.
And so at what stage do you record the phrase? Is that once you've created the workflow?
Yeah. So from a developer point of view, you can, for your shortcut, you can give a recommended phrase, and then that surfaces differently in iOS. But when you, and then you can record it then and add it to Siri without using the Siri Shortcuts app. But if you use Siri Shortcuts, you first set up your series of events, and then you can add it to Siri as just like one of the options there. You could add it to your share sheet, to your widget, or to Siri.
Very interesting. And making the commitment to putting it in your dock is definitely a big move. It's something that I don't take lightly either. So the fact that you've had that standard dock for all that time, and you've actually, knowingly put it there as a way to make yourself use it more, I think is a smart move. And hey, I'm keen to knock off one of mine in favor of the Shortcuts app too, because it is a good icon, as I have said. So, all right. Well, yeah. Thanks for that bit of insight, and yeah, I'm sure we'll discuss it in a future episode before the final release. And then, of course, once it is actually released, then I'll be trying it out too. So, even more to talk about there. Something else to talk about, which follows on directly from episode 54, is Lance and I covered the whole MacBook Pro keyboard repair program scenario, and within 2 weeks after that episode, a surprise quick online release just overnight of 2018 MacBook Pros. So we were expecting them. I certainly wasn't expecting them this early. If anything, I thought it might be pushed to October, but I'm glad that it's happened now. So before we actually get into the details, did you have any inkling that it would arrive at this time?
No idea. I think I'll get to it a bit later, but that's probably the thing I liked most about the announcement is I just had no idea they were coming.
I know. It's crazy. I literally woke up and I guess initially I thought it must have been some sort of concept thing or something, and then I looked into it. I was like, there's a full on of like miniature event of sorts with this. This is crazy. So to give you an idea of how this all came out, if you're not familiar with it, there was basically Apple held a launch event, and this was covered by the tech site iMore, and it basically featured a whole bunch of pros that had tested this new MacBook Pros and gave demonstrations. This included photographers, video editors, music producers. There was a professor, there was app developers, and one of them, funnily enough, was Leah from Breaker, who is the podcast company that I spoke to earlier in the year. And these updates apply only to the 13-inch and 15-inch touch bar models, so the non-touch bar model does not get an update yet. Same pricing as before. So what do you get for this update? The big one is the 8th generation Coffee Lake Intel. So 13-inch has quad-core as standard, and 15-inch has hex-core, being 6-core. Switching upper level in the course for the processors isn't something that you see that often with Apple, so it's actually quite a big deal for people that kind of pass this off as just like a minor update. This processor upgrade is actually quite a big deal. Up to 32 gig RAM option, which was the complaint from the last touch bar models. They've replaced the LP DDR3 RAM of DDR4. Now this uses more battery, but they've actually increased the battery to allow for it, so you get around the same battery life anyway.
So just on the Coffee Lake Intel processors, as you mentioned, Apple stepping up the number of cores is really uncommon and exciting, but do you know anything more about the range of processors? Like, were there decent dual core and quad core options that an Apple that wasn't trying to push the boundaries might have taken, or is this now the de facto choice that they just naturally would have went with?
I'm thinking about the latter option. Like, I think it's, how I see it, without thinking about it too much, is that basically straight, like, if you're reading it like specs on a page, like pros are wanting their MacBook Pros to be more powerful, and instantly if you sell, hey, this comes as quad core as standard, and then this is hex core as standard, it's like, yes, they're listening to me. That just sort of instantaneous recognition of the type of processing power that these professionals need. And that's probably about as far as I've thought about it. To be honest, I'm not that involved in what chips, what processors mean what. All I know from my perspective is the fact that it is the latest generation and they have bumped up the core factor. Okay, so you can now get a 4TB SSD option. With the 13-inch MacBook Pro, this new one, they did some speed tests, and it was awesome to see. Basically, they compared the 13-inch along with rival laptops of similar spec, and they did a file copy test where they copied a 4 gig file in 2 seconds, which completely obliterated the competition. And I just love that things like the write speed and that is quite a good focal point for Apple, and they've just pushed that sort of performance further because of stuff like the Apple file system. So that in itself, like, I know you are more in the iPad space, that type of thing, and you do have a MacBook, but do you have any need for actually investing in something like a MacBook Pro with these sort of specs?
Oh, I definitely have a need for it, but I'm not necessarily sure that I have. I have the justification and the desire, but I do so well on my 12-inch MacBook. I'm not actually sure that it's entirely necessary. It's just that I could easily take advantage of all of those specs if I had them, but I'm kind of a little bit patient with my 12-inch MacBook and I just chill about it. But I will just say the answer to my own question earlier is that Core i5 on the mobile side only come with 4 cores, but the i7 does have a 4-core variant, and 2 6-core variants, which, obviously if Apple wanted to, they could have used the quad-core i7, but obviously on the i5s, they've been given that. So a little bit not necessarily them pushing the boundaries, but either way, I'm excited. I think that the power is amazing. Like, I could use it for machine learning, app development, so many things, but I'm just gonna stick with the 12-inch MacBook.
I kind of always gathered that, given your love, or say the more that you talk about things like Apple Watch and iPad, that's sort of where I expect you to just like jump straight at the newest release. So it's not a total surprise that you're not dropping a few thousand on a new MacBook Pro just out of the air, because it is certainly a bigger investment. So and the fact that you've already got a setup that works for you, there's no real reason to. But something that I think is really compelling, and I'm so glad that it's come to MacBook Pro, is True Tone display. So you and I are both big fans of True Tone display, and they even brought it to the touch bar. And it's like, that made me so happy, because it's like, Apple still care about the touch bar. I mean, I know they care about the touch bar, but they're not sweeping it under the rug, or they haven't removed it already. So, I mean, we're still waiting on some more rollout and support from third-party developers in that area, and I am seeing more and more. But yeah, what do you think about just going that extra step to bring True Tone to such a small strip on the keyboard?
Yeah, that is really interesting, because I think of that strip as more keyboard than display, and Apple clearly thinks of it as more display than keyboard. And that detail would have gone completely over me. Like, if they didn't do it, I wouldn't have thought, well, they really should have done that. But, it's just attention to detail. And I think I'll speak a bit more about it later, but, it's good to see when they do pay attention to detail.
Renee Ritchie from iMore actually gave the suggestion of he would love to have haptics in the touch bar, which I actually think would be really cool. It would go a long way to kind of adding to the realism of using it, because you're sort of just tapping against a hard screen and nothing else really. So I love using it. I still use it all the time. I use it every day. But if you added that in a future update, providing touch bar's still around, that would be awesome. And True Tone even goes as far as, if you connect it to the LG Ultrafine or Thunderbolt displays, but the MacBook has to be open, then True Tone is then passed through to that. So that's, taking it to the next level too, which is cool. Okay, so something that we've always questioned is, why have they not put Hello Siri on the Mac yet? So there is Siri on the Mac, but you have to trigger it with a button or, a shortcut. Now, the T2 chip, which they've included in this, allows for it. So aside from Hello Siri, it allows for things like real-time encryption and secure boot, which the iMac Pro does, because the iMac Pro has the T2 chip. So that being said, why or when do you think they would bring Hello Siri to the iMac Pro? And is there some difference between the two that's not allowing it?
For me, Hello Siri is probably... It has been in the past a reason that I've upgraded, right? It's a feature that I love and I use every single day, especially with HomePod, like maybe, at least 30 times a day. So it's something that I really care about. And so when the 12.9-inch iPad Pro was launched, it was launched with an M9 Motion coprocessor. And when the iPad Pro 9.7-inch was launched, it was launched with It was launched with Hello Siri, and with the marketing saying that the M9 Motion coprocessor enables it, right? So, same coprocessor, but not same feature set, even though it specifically mentioned that's why it had it. Now, the exact same thing has happened with this, where we've got two T2 processors, one where the marketing actually specifically says this enables, Hello Siri. So I don't know if it will come to it. I don't know what if it's actually a T2 or a T2.1. I hope it comes in Mojave.
What I like about this also is it's actually another piece of hardware where they're continuing to push the hybrid Intel and ARM architecture. So, I can still see a completely ARM run MacBook on the horizon somewhere, whether it's the lower end model or something. But the fact that they're continuing to push that in their hardware is a good sign. The big one, the keyboard. So I discussed this in the last episode. I've had a few issues with some stuck keys that were very easy to fix, just either by pressing it or lifting it up slightly and blow some air in there. So I certainly haven't experienced it to the level that other people have. That being said, I am a fan of the butterfly key, the feel, and I know at least a lot of people in the tech community. I don't know in general, but I know because you and I are so involved in following people in the tech community, we hear about this a lot. It's covered in so many podcasts a lot, and people complaining about it all the time. And I'd always, never quite understood what they meant, because I think they have a real nostalgia for something like the MacBook Air and that type of thing, and that style of keyboard, right? So what they did state is that it's a third generation and that it is quieter. So there's no reference to any reliability, which to me, straight up seems because of the legal battles and stuff that are going on involving it. And iFixit then found that there's actually a thin silicone barrier under each key. So that would explain the quieter volume, but then protection against dust and particles, I guess. And apparently there's actually larger speakers in there too. So how they handled this, like what are your thoughts on that? Because there are people that are, I always thought this was the way it was going to go. Just an improved version, so a third generation, and the actual physical design wouldn't have really changed.
Yeah, absolutely. Exactly as you say, just a refined version without a physical, design change is exactly what I envisioned. Apple is not going to redesign everything every 2 years. So I think it's a neat solution to a problem that people were clearly experiencing, and hopefully it's good enough. I personally didn't have the issue, but I hate when people complain about Apple. So, if they can do anything to address legitimate issues, I'm quite judgy, so I don't eat, and I think people shouldn't eat near their computers, but I try to think of cases where people may be using them in more like dirty areas. Say, for example, you wanted to connect your Mac to some manufacturing machinery that, is like in a factory where there's dust. It's got to be reliable. And so, in situations where it's not necessarily like a lack of care, it should still work. So in that sense, I'm glad that they've done stuff to address the, at least, public issue.
On Butterfly itself, what's your reaction with it? Now that you've lived with it, because you have a MacBook that has it, do you spend much time typing on it to really kind of gauge how you feel about it?
Yeah, I mean, I'm working on an app, so I code all the time, and I love the keyboard. I love the keyboard so much more than, especially so much more than my work keyboard, which is just like this plasticky rubbish. And, it's reliable in my sense, as in I don't have typos. It's fast. One thing I will say is I actually like the volume. I find it like soothing, and I just like the repetitive clicky and clacky noises. So I wouldn't say it would be a reason for me to not upgrade, but I would kind of miss that sound.
Well, apparently the volume decrease is noticeable, but not so much so that it feels like a completely different keyboard. And in the parts they've changed, it's actually changed apparently the tone of the sound of it. That's been improved as well. So, hey, they're bringing true tone sound to the keyboard, I guess. But
true tone display keyboard, and so maybe they do think of the touch bar as being more keyboard than display.
Well, there you go. And an exciting little addition is leather sleeves to suit. So you and I are both fans of the leather sleeves. I never took the plunge with the iPad Pro, which I don't have now anyway, in anticipation for this new one. But I always wanted one for my MacBook Pro, but it was only available for the 12-inch. So, yeah. I guess just before we wrap up on our thoughts on it, I am currently at a bit of a crossroads as to whether I try sell mine and upgrade or not. I don't really have. My current one, I love it. Use it all the time. Don't have any problems with it. So the only reason for me to want to upgrade is just to have the newer one, to have the True Tone display in that. But I'm not, handling a terrible keyboard situation or anything like that as a way, for me to really drive an upgrade. But that's sort of where I'm sitting at with it. Any other thoughts on these 2018 MacBook Pros?
Yeah, obviously, as you mentioned, the leather sleeves are awesome. I love the leather sleeves. I don't own any. I don't know what it is. I just kind of think, I would get that, and then I don't buy it. So it's kind of I hope
they
that
are pricey, but
but I hope it's not like everyone does that, because there's got to be enough demand for things to carry on. So hopefully I get in before these things get discontinued. But then again, photo books stayed around for 16 years. So hopefully, there's some time for me. But, overall, this MacBook Pro update has been, I found myself genuinely excited about it.
I think the way they delivered the announcement as well was good. Like no event, no nothing, just bam. Yeah.
Yeah. It was no waiting around. And then, so it got me thinking, when last was I this excited about a Mac update? And I was like, I haven't been this excited since the iMac Pro. And then I realized, well, the iMac Pro was literally just the last one they updated. But I think the point there is that I haven't actually been that excited about MacBook updates for a while. Obviously I do own the 12-inch MacBook, but that's more out of a necessity for having a macOS device versus actually actively desiring that specific machine. So, these are really exciting computers. I'm not sure, if I really was going for the power, which I believe I would use, do I then rather see that an iMac is better for me? So I'm not sure that, where it would fit in with my requirements, but, it's super powerful. So it certainly suits most people's requirements. They've done a lot to address the issues that people have had, both, out of necessity, like the keyboard that we mentioned, but I think also 32 gigs of RAM, True Tone displays is awesome. I love that it goes onto, external displays also, specific external displays, but it does, it just adds to their functionality and a consistent experience, which I really do like. Was I surprised? Yes. But at the same time, the timing of the repair announcement did indicate that something was going to happen. It would have been really weird for them to just leave that for 3 months without anything, because people would have been saying, I'm not going to get it because it has issues. So, maybe we should have looked up a bit more at that. So I mentioned a little bit earlier about consistency, and, maybe I'm being nitpicky here, and maybe I just want the coolest tech that Apple has in every device updated immediately. A great example that I can think of, something I also use every day is 3D Touch. And I'd really hoped that it would come to iPad, never came to iPad. And so that's what really got me thinking about, is consistency dead at Apple? And, if I'm being nitpicky and I'm really looking at it critically, should these devices have Face ID? Or is it okay that they have Touch ID? So if it's bringing the cost down thing, fine. But I don't know how much extra those parts cost. But it would be awesome if you just looked at your computer. I know Windows has it. It's obviously not as secure as Apple, and I'm not going to be quoted on that one, but I think Apple does a good job for security. But it's definitely something that I would like to see, a Face ID option.
I think that was always going to come to iPad before Mac anyway, because of the actual physical thickness of an iPhone and an iPad versus the lid, the screen of the MacBook, which is that much thinner that they probably will have to redesign it to physically fit. So I am expecting it would be amazing to have Face ID on Macs. It makes so much sense. It makes even more sense than an iPad Pro kind of, not really. Actually, I'll take that back. But just lifting the lid up and it unlocking I mean, we have the advantage of the Apple Watch unlock, but if that was there too, yeah, I'd be in on that. But I don't think the consistency has been thrown out the window. I just think I am expecting a staged rollout. I'm definitely expecting Face ID iPad Pros at least by October, and maybe in the Macs a year to a year and a half from now.
I would imagine on the next redesign. So as I mentioned, it doesn't like come all, it's not redesigned all the time. So I probably think like next redesign, which probably realistically would be about 2020. Obviously not based on any rumors, but yeah, certainly agree that, it doesn't necessarily mean that their consistency days are behind them, but, just something I noted. So, pricing is obviously something that you could always talk about. I think what people ignore with the pricing, is that the differentiation suits a lot of customers because it gives them an entry point that doesn't involve things that they don't need. You're not necessarily getting a 4 terabyte option just because it exists and they can charge you for it. They are offering 256 gig and then scaling it up. So it's kind of, we can always talk about how it could be cheaper or should it be cheaper. Maybe options shouldn't be as expensive, but, ultimately pricing doesn't affect everyone in the same way. And, people could always want, everyone wants something to be cheaper. So, are they, they're not necessarily significantly more expensive than the previous model. So we can't really fault them, on price inflation in that sense. But what I will say, following on from that, is that Apple is really making strides in differentiating the Pro models from the consumer models. There was a time where consumer, Pro kind of meant consumer at Apple. Thinking, the one thing about the MacBook Pros when they still had CD drives, a lot of just regular people had that MacBook Pro, right? And then they kind of started getting, now they've got the iMac Pro, which is a workstation beast, incredible machine. And then they've got the MacBook Pros, which are, these new MacBook Pros, which are also incredibly powerful machines that are much better, much more powerful than not only the previous generation, but the MacBook standard, and obviously because they still sell it, the MacBook Air. So I really like the differentiation that I don't believe that genuine pros can say that it's underpowered for their needs if they got the most appropriate model for their needs. I think they cater to proper pros.
Yeah, definitely agree there. Okay, so the one thing I do think they should have done is spec bumped the non-touch bar model and just release a 15-inch non-touch bar model. Just in the sense that I love touch bar and I would always probably buy the version with it, but there is that price difference from having it there. And I just think in terms of all the different complaints you could get from pros, that's probably one that I could kind of understand the most. You have people that complain about ports and that's always going to happen when you're trying to, push industry forward like they're doing with USB-C. But yeah, if they could have updated that and then provide the 15-inch version, I think that would help as well in terms of, just addressing a portion of the complaints. But as you say, they don't design these things, they don't change on a whim or anything like that. But that sort of thing, just by updating them and adding that extra size, seems doable to me. But yeah,
I am surprised they didn't update the non-touch bar model. Actually, if they're not updating that, then I don't know why they ever introduced it. So we'll see.
Okay, so how about this eGPU that was announced as well?
Man, I love it. Do you want to run through what it is before I actually give my ideas? But it is awesome.
Okay, it's called the Blackmagic Design eGPU. It was Apple and Blackmagic worked together on it. It's built around the Radeon Pro 580, which is 8 gigs. It's the first eGPU to have out-of-the-box compatibility with the 5K ultra-fine display. They certainly boast the fact that it has quiet volume levels. It's only available through the Apple Store. It's priced in Australia at $11.49, which when you convert from the $6.99 American plus the GST is $10.35. So there's a little bit of something else slapped on the top of that, but not quite the discrepancy that we got with iPhone 10. That's about as much as I know about it. I think it looks kind of cool. They tried to color match it, I guess. But what are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, so GPUs at Apple have had a long and not so great history. Obviously, they bet on the multiple GPU for the Mac Pros, which was a failed bet because the industry moved towards a single giant GPU, and they moved away from NVIDIA, and there were a whole bunch of things that Apple has not done well there. But eGPU support basically means that you can plug in any GPU that has the correct drivers and take advantage of that. So, as they get updated, you can keep the same machine and just plug in the new ones. Now, obviously, people are excited because they can do gaming or VR. I'm less interested in that. I'm most excited about the capabilities or the speed improvements for machine learning. I don't know if you recall Apple announcing at the WWDC keynote, they created a framework called CreateML to perform machine learning, and that's built off of Metal and takes full advantage of GPUs to actually do that training. Now, I've been experimenting with CreateML, and I've seen a lot of positive things around in that framework, and having this dedicated eGPU that Apple built with such powerful specs, it makes me really excited. And if my computer had Thunderbolt 3, I would almost certainly actually go out and buy one, because it would just add so much to my life having that. Just unfortunately, the MacBook is USB-C, and it's not worth the whole package for me to upgrade. But, definitely something that a lot of people can use, whether you are in design and looking at designing in 3D or for VR, or if you're in machine learning or for gaming. This is I find it a really good package. It's not a bad deal. So
I certainly also think in terms of third-party pieces of hardware that Apple have had some involvement in, this looks a lot more attractive than, say, the LG Ultrafine. To me.
Well, Apple's involvement, what their actual involvement is always, up in the air, but it's clear that their involvement involved design on this. I just have one question about that is whether the Space Gray matches 99%, or is it 100% the same? Which variant of Space Gray have they used?
I actually think it's so hard to tell, but I actually think it's very slightly warmer. That may just be the lighting in the photos and the videos, but it's at a glance, it looks like it totally suits. I'm sure that you could pick differences, but also at the same time, it's actually hard to color, to stare at two objects and color match them if they're at different sizes as well. Like a large flat surface of a MacBook in space gray can look different than the space gray on iPhone or something like that.
Right.
Even if they were made at the exact same shade of space gray, it can still, the sizing can kind of trick your mind, and the shape of this is quite unique too. So I think at least at a glance, or if you look at it for 5 seconds, you're like, it totally fits.
Awesome.
But I just, iMac Pro is in a certain darker space gray, and then these MacBook Pros and this Blackmagic are in the previous space gray, at least as far as I can tell. So can't we just settle on one space gray?
Oh no, it's a journey through space, and space is endless. That's why it's called space gray. It's the endless shades.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Well, that wraps up MacBook Pro. It is very exciting. Whether I upgrade or not, I'm not sure. Because speaking of future purchases, iPad Pro, which I'm just sitting here twiddling my thumbs waiting for, there's been a few more details from a familiar source about an iPad Pro being at an 11-inch size. So can you drop some details on this?
Yeah, our old friend Ming Chi Kuo, previously of KGI Securities and now of ABC Securities, is he's back.
Is it ABC or TF?
No, I was joking about ABC. I was just
okay.
just basically saying we moved from one securities company to another securities company, and nothing has changed. I kind of gave him a farewell, hoping he would leave permanently, because I realize, and I back my point now because of how excited I am about this damn MacBook Pro, which is something that I never expected to be. So anyway, he's back, spoiling the details for us. Is it boo or yay? I'm not sure, but either way, if you're keen on your details, we have them for you. He's talking about redesigned iPad Pros. I'm thinking this redesign specifically is just the front. I'm not entirely sure it will have anything to do with the back. So let's just imagine the front, redesigned.
No glass back.
Well, I'm hoping for that. But definitely no landscape.
No.
Yeah,
I tried it.
So the 10.5-inch model, and now we kind of thought this would happen from 9.7 to 10.5, but anyway, they are saying that the 10.5-inch iPad will retain its overall size, but the screen will become 11 inches as it moves to bezel-less, and then 12.9-inch screen itself will remain the same, and obviously the body will shrink. Yeah, so I think that those are both great. The overall size from a 10.5 inches is fine, perfect, light, amazing. Do I love bigger screens? Sure, I love bigger screens. Give me the biggest screen you can for that body. And 12.9, well, that is a bit heavy. It's a bit large and unwieldy. And so if you can keep that same screen, which is already giant, then and reduce the bezels, I love it.
Yeah, it'll feel better in the hand, I think. It won't feel so cumbersome, probably, just by reducing it that bit.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, are they differentiated enough? I'm not sure. There are any small differences between the 4.7 and 5.5 inch phones. And yet, you have people that are all for the one and not the other. So, who knows whether it's differentiated enough? I just think it's awesome that we have the option. I love the 12.9 inch actual surface area. It's really good. You can do a lot with that, having your 2 or 3 apps open at the same time. But from a developer point of view, obviously, trying to work on an application, having a new screen size out will be a major pain for me because, keep in mind, this is not my profession and not my training. Trying to work out all these details is a bit annoying. So, developing for multiple screen sizes is a pain. Obviously Apple's nowhere near as bad as Android, but it's just like from a very selfish point of view, I just wish it would also be 10.5, so I have one less thing to worry about.
Considering 10.5 has not been around for that long, really. So, 11 inch is a clean number. I like, just visually looking at that spec, but I just expected, the 10.5 would stay, given that it was seemingly only just introduced. I know it has been a while, but it hasn't been that long. What I do like about this is just bumping up to 11 just widens that gap between the 9.7 inch mid, like the consumer level one versus the like exactly what you're describing. What they're trying to push with the Pro side of things, they kind of, because when they announced the iPad update in March and Apple Pencil support and stuff like that, and then you see the price difference between the iPad Pro, and obviously there's all things like ProMotion and True Tone and all that. But I was thinking, okay, this gap is closing, and just by doing these little things and giving it the redesign and expected Face ID and stuff is just going to really kind of separate it, at least visually, for people. Like, that's the cheaper iPad that can do this sort of task, and this is your Pro model that looks different, it's larger, and all that sort of stuff. So that really excites me.
Yeah, it will help with the differentiation. Yeah.
So yeah, I have been iPad less for a while now. I nearly caved 2 days ago to get the March iPad, but I haven't done that yet. So you were posing the question, will it be A11X or A12X? So
yes.
What do you reckon of that?
So this is another situation where I just hope that what I want here is true, just because I want consistency and I want the best. I want it to be A12X. I don't care, even if the speed is what an A11X would have been. I don't care. I just want it to be an A12X. Even like, how T2, they have 2 different T2s. I don't care which one is which. I just want one that is like, I want my A12X from the iPhone, the next iPhone, A12 from the next iPhone, and A12X from the next iPad. I don't want to feel like try and match up years differently to, just give me that, please.
Plus, the main thing I love about that is that number locks in with the iOS.
Yeah, it's perfectly
iOS
consistent.
12, A12, yeah. I would be surprised if it's A11X. Also, just going again with that same point of just creating that differentiation between the Pro iPads and then the one they announced in March. So I think they're just going to have to go to the top with it. They're already like that far ahead with the performance with iPad Pros, and I just think there's no reason to stop or kind of rest on your laurels. I think it's A12X or GTFO. So yeah. All right, well, that's some rumors about the iPad Pro. He did mention other stuff like Mac Mini in that, which was really surprising, but I'm sure he'll pull out some other details next week. But anyway,
if the Mac Mini is bigger than like a big USB stick or like a hard drive, I would be. That's like the size a Mac Mini has got to be in, in this day and age. But
yeah,
maybe like Apple TV size. I heard someone else say that, and like that's kind of I was thinking for a moment that Intel like stick, but that's probably like not worth getting. So yeah, maybe Apple TV size.
We've got a few of those stick PCs at work, and they're just so troublesome. Yeah. And then we've got some of those like mini PCs at work, and they're also troublesome too. But I mean, they are a lot cheaper. But yeah, I'd expect Apple TV size for sure. Okay, so very quickly. The iPhone has just been in survivor mode. I think if they had a season of Survivor around technology, then iPhone would come out top place. So, just quickly, this one I found amazing. An iPhone 7 spent 48 hours underwater. It was found by a scuba diver 30 feet below where they were diving, and they noticed it because it lit up because it received a text message all that way under the water. And it had 84% charge still. And then so the scuba diver retrieved it, went through the person's contacts to find the owner, which I found weird because it's like, was there no passcode on it? But anyway. And apparently the owner had dropped the phone kayaking, and then they made contact and it got back to the original owner. So
weird.
The fact that just the battery level, the receiving a text message that far under the water, I mean, I'm sure that's not going to apply in every situation, but it's just like a series of points that make it quite an amazing story.
Yeah, I think especially, as you say, the battery percentage. So maybe the theory there could be, if you're running out of battery and you need to keep it, just put your phone in water. It really seems to last. But yeah, that's pretty cool.
There's also this YouTuber who's got this channel called Man Plus River, and he like goes for treasure diving in rivers where people have dropped stuff. He found a silver iPhone 10. He was able to power it on. Apparently he dried it out and he returned it to the owner, Alyssa, who was a new mum who hadn't backed up her newborn pictures. And I'm just like, use iCloud Photo Library already.
Yep. Honestly, the 99 cents for having all of your newborn's baby pictures, totally worth it.
Exactly. Some people just don't want to pay that 99 cents, huh? Okay, iPhone 7 Plus, there's this world's tallest swing ride in Orlando, and you can actually see the footage of this online. So this lady named Cancel was recording herself on the ride, and she drops it, and it's like 450 feet to the ground. I had no case on it, and in the footage you can see it just flipped and flipped and flipped and flipped, landed with the screen up, And then she used, once she got off the ride, used Find My iPhone to get the location, and the entire phone survived with just a scratch, which I wouldn't recommend just throwing your phone off of rides, but when these sorts of things happen, when someone drops it accidentally, like they're not actually doing, breakage tests, and you have these survival stories, I just love reading about it because I would know could understand the feeling of it slipping out your hands when you're that high up. You'd just be like, resolve yourself to the fact that it's gone forever.
Yeah.
And then lastly, this pilot in America, Sarvinda, she was flying a vintage biplane. I just love all these details in these stories that seem quite random. And she was taking photos while she was flying the plane, and her phone fell out of her hand 1,000 feet to the ground. And then she used Find My iPhone, and she called it to locate it. And it wasn't quite in a rugged case, and it had landed on soft grass, but there was no damage to it. So I don't really know the effects of being that far up, like 1,000 feet, and then how much the actual grass and that helped. But hey, if you're flying a plane, possibly don't take photos with your hand out the window.
Ultimately, it reaches like terminal velocity from gravity anyway, so there would be a point where it could be like 1,000 feet, or it might as well be 10,000 feet, where it actually just stops mattering. But obviously here in this case, the soft grass is what really helped it out. But what are the chances? Just a whole bunch of feel good stories in the past couple of weeks. Yeah, pretty cool.
I had just briefly, I had one ages ago when I had my 5S. I'd accidentally left it on top of the car, and I went to go drive down to the shop to go get the paper, completely forgot about that. And then it wasn't until an hour later, I got back home and I was like, where's my phone? And I thought, man, somebody's stolen it. And I was trying to Find My iPhone, but the street where it ended up was in an area where there was no reception, so that couldn't even work. And I was walking around area, retraced my steps. I was like, oh, that's it. I went in the car, and I didn't have a case on mine either. And what had happened was it had flown off the car as I went around the corner on the roundabout, and it had hit on the corner on the footpath, and then flipped over and then landed on somebody's lawn, and all I had was a slight bump on the corner. I was just so thankful that given any possible way it could have landed, that it just bounced off the corner.
Yeah, pretty cool.
Yeah, that's a good one. But at least your iPhone won't fly away from you.
Yeah.
All right, so very quickly, Photoshop for iPad has been announced, which I'm really excited about. So apparently Adobe have just come out there saying they're going to demo this in October at the Adobe Max event, and they're going to release it next year. So this is an example of the whole cross-platform Marzipan UI kit API app kit type of thing. It's going to be a full-featured set Photoshop, not like the current way they've done it, where they split it into separate apps, which is really annoying. They're touting improved sync and collaboration. This, to me, is directly a rival for Affinity Photo, which is something that, like, the fact that Adobe haven't already taken this plunge with iPad properly astounds me, so I'm glad they're actually getting around to it. Apparently, they're working on Illustrator, which is a big one for me. I currently use Illustrator Draw, which is, again, like a part feature version. I'd really, really, really love to see InDesign on iPad. If they released that and it was good, I would definitely get a 12.9 inch to do layout work with. That would be amazing. Along with this announcement, all your Microsoft Surface fans are saying, I've always been able to run, Photoshop on my Surface, which is like a tablet optimized version. I don't know in real life how that actually the performance is. All we do know, or at least all I know, is the fact that because of iPad Pro's leading chip performance, that is really their advantage with it. So I'm really excited that such a big name like Adobe have actually come out and they're embracing this whole cross-platform stuff. So, it is exciting, and we'll see next year what it's like, and it is part of the Creative Cloud subscription, so I do have that already, so I'll be using it day one. Okay, and finally, Nick, there's been a bit of regrouping at Apple.
Yes, after having Siri for so long and really allowing it to mature under his great and fantastic leadership, Craig Federighi has so kindly given it over to John Gianandrea, who we had mentioned on the podcast previously as coming over from Google. He's a huge name in machine learning and AI, and he's Apple's chief of machine learning and AI strategy. And so Siri will now fall under him, and Apple's trying to make sure that all of those related teams fall under one person's guidance. So it surely makes it makes sense to me. I've heard great things about him. Let's see what happens with Siri. Go for it. No objections.
I like the fact that they've come together in one solid team under one leadership. And yeah, WWDC 2019, I'm expecting to see the effects of or the results of some of his work. So yeah, I'm keen on that.
I think one thing I want to mention on that is that when a lot of people think about Siri, they really just think about the voice assistant. But what I've noticed more and more is how useful the Siri branded things are becoming in other areas of my life. Like, I often now just use the Siri suggested website when I'm entering into a search bar and not using the Google, not using Google search and then going through there. And that, for me, it's just these different areas where Siri is just coming into its own. Obviously with Siri shortcuts, that's a different thing. But it's definitely more than just the voice assistant, and in the other areas is performing pretty well.
I actually noticed that today as well. I'm just replying to an email, and I was just trying to CC some people into it, and the options that were coming up on the touch bar were I wasn't replying from a thread or anything. Like, it was like a new email, and the options that were coming up on the touch bar were the 3 exact people I needed to include in the conversation. So just little things like that. I was like, man, that was so helpful. It was just literally just like blip, 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 like 3 little taps on the touch bar, and I was done.
Yep.
It's, as you say, Siri is the overall picture, primarily ridiculed in the voice area, but it is the overall picture.
Yeah, it's also, when it finds a calendar event in your mail, or when it finds a calendar event and knows that you are looking for how to get there in Maps. It's all of that sort of integration around like predicting your desires, and I think they're doing really well. So I'm certainly enjoying how it's all coming together.
Awesome. And that wraps up episode 55 of Apple Size Podcast. We are part of a podcast network, which is
Ozcast Network. You can find them at ozcastnetwork.com. That's AUS castnetwork.com.
And if you'd like to subscribe and you haven't already, please search in your player. And I know so many podcasts say this, but we haven't mentioned it for a long time, but it would be great if you could leave a review if you're in the Apple Podcast app, or if you're using iTunes and we're there, please leave a review. We'd love to hear your feedback and see your ratings. We're also on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook with the Australian Apple Fans Facebook group that you can join if you'd like. Any last thoughts?
Not really. I think I might just give a plug to my application that I'm been developing. So I don't quite have a horizon for it, and I'm not really willing to tell you what it is just yet, but it's something that I'm really excited about and is getting me more excited about Macs. And as I mentioned, I've been using CreateML, so I'm certainly finding a lot more use for macOS in my life, but don't worry, I still love my iPad, and if I had to give away one, it would definitely not be my iPad.
I think your nickname should just be Nick, I love my iPad Morris.
It's true. Because, I really do. I think anyone who ever asks me about my iPad at work always ends up regretting it, but I definitely love my iPad. And actually, I use Swift Playgrounds to build my functions that I incorporate into my app later. And so when I'm on the train, I'll just use Swift Playgrounds, smash out the function and get home and incorporate it. Like I did my encryption that way. So, definitely some cross-device functionality, and have a use for the iPad with my development, but getting excited about macOS again.
Awesome to hear. And so I'm just going to sit here and wait for the test flight invite at some point in the future. So,
yeah.
All right. Awesome. Been having a chat. And I'm sure there's going to be, in the lead up to September, there's going to be more and more Ming-Chi Kuo-ish types of things that are popping up, but we'll address it when it comes to it. We'll cover more stuff with shortcuts, more beta action on the way, and I'll catch you in the next episode.
Are you a podcaster? Maybe you've got that big idea and you're looking for a network to join. The multi-award winning Ozcast network can get your content to eyes and ears all over the world. Join now for the first month free, and you could be featuring this sound at the beginning of your podcast.
Ozcast.
Simply head to ozcastnetwork.com for details.